even if you look at someone like Lemmy from Motorhead who dresses down, he's got his own sartorial flair and he hasn't changed it in 20 years. He's got a cowboy shirt and he's got a handlebar mustache. He might have a wart or two popping up someplace, and that's Lemmy. And he's an icon, and so you have to, I mean, for anybody that unattractive to become an icon, you know that image is important in heavy metal.
What had become part of the iconography was basically Rob Halford's discovering studs, leather and studs, and I think that's a whole kind of iconography for metal.
When we first began, the music came first and then the image, you know, came a little bit later. But once we found that look, once we found something where you look in the mirror before you go on stage and you actually look like you feel like you want to sound, that's magic.
If Rob Halford is on stage with Judas Priest wearing a jacket that probably weighs twice as much as him because it's got so many studs and bullets and God knows what else, you know, he's doing that because he's the metal god, and particularly now he's back in Judas Priest, he needs to have something that looks a bit ridiculous, but he knows it's ridiculous.
In the early days of the band with our first singer, Neil, he definitely had his idea for the band was we were Judas Priest, and that's the way we would look. And on our first tour ever, we were all in the leather pants and the spikes and all that kind of stuff, and he was out of the band right after that tour, and all that stuff immediately went into the garbage.
And there were a lot of bands that, you know, sounded crap that looked, you know, great or appropriate for that era that did phenomenally well.
I think the trouble with a lot of metal bands is they actually are stereotypical. They have a look, they have a pose, they have an attitude, and it's very, very hard to actually differentiate one band from another. And I don't mean that in twos and threes, I mean that in their hundreds.
Image was important, but more so to most bands. They relied on it, particularly later in the 80s. It became a factor. I mean, you know, once the scene was established, per se, with the Motleys and the Rats and the Quiet Riots and etc., then the look became, you know, too important.
It's very much a function of the times in which they were operating at the time. You know, look at who they're up against in the charts. They're up against Duran Duran. Now, you can't react to that by saying, well, I know, let's just make ourselves look as ugly as we possibly can. The only thing you can do is to go with the flow and to glam it up yourselves. There's absolutely no way in which you can avoid it. So in many respects, that at the time, in its context, would qualify as being extremely authentic. That's what pop stars look like.
You could have the best look in the world, and if their music's not pummeling, if the kids aren't into the music, it's not going to work. If you have an image like Kiss, or Mudvayne, or Slipknot, or Alice Cooper, any of the bands over the years that have had strong visual imagery, it definitely helps get you a leg up. You know, it helps get you noticed. It helps call attention. It helps, you know, gives magazines a reason to want to cover it. It's something new. It's extreme. It looks cool.
Well, the media has always been important because without the media, how do you get outside of your garage, literally? I mean, and you know, word of mouth only goes so far. Of course, these days you've got the internet, but you know, the power of the media is they're still the most powerful tool out there. The cover of a magazine or being on a television show or getting your video played is still the most powerful tool as a band.
It's kind of a strange situation where you've got a magazine like Kerrang existing sort of in a kind of corporate world of magazines, and yet covering a scene that's, you know, much more about sort of underground and hardcore integrity, all that sort of stuff. everybody that works in metal media and all the sort of surrounding areas of that really believes in this music. And the mission really is just to make it as popular as it can possibly be and show people that this is the best music on the planet.
Most of the metal media is still fans writing about bands. Most of the journalists I know at all the magazines, whether they're new or old, they're all really into what they do. People actually really like writing about the music. It's not just a job.
They should be able to read about bands that people aren't necessarily generally talking about, and read about things that are going on that they can't get anywhere else.
It's not about intellectualizing something, it's about being articulate. People said, you know, you shouldn't intellectualize punk, but punk was an intellectual movement. I like the fact that we cover the most filthiest, most degrading, disgusting music that there is around, and we're very proud to do so, but we have the highest caliber of writing that there is.
I go to Europe and I do 400 interviews, so it seems to me like, you know, there's more metal press than ever.
Everybody who likes metal has a small part of themselves that they don't want their music to be the mainstream. That would be, you know, the kiss of death. You don't mind some bands breaking into the mainstream, you don't mind Metallica being the biggest band in the world for a few years, but you would hate to think that everybody would be metal. There'd be no point in everybody. You know, there'd be no outsider sort of status.
This record straight. All the needles pushing is making me irate. Sick of my bitch falling on their fears. Where you gonna be in the next 5 years?
When a band becomes really popular, suddenly people who were originally into them walk away from them going, they're not mine anymore, and they're shit now, you know, we don't want to know.
They just can't handle having their kid brother or that fucking disco asshole liking their band. It violates them some way. It makes them feel that there's something wrong with them. How could I like the same music as that poofter or my kid brother?
Nirvana is a prime example of that. That there were loads of kids who thought they were, like, in their own world, had this band for themselves, and then all of a sudden Nevermind goes and sells shitloads of albums, and their original fans run away because their mums and dads are going, oh, that band you like's on the TV again. And I think it really does change a lot of people's views of it.
When a band transcends that kind of intimacy between their fans and they become bigger than their fans, it's just a matter of time. Every band that's had that happen has fallen.
The more tickets we were selling for gigs, the more we were kind of alienated from the people that were buying the tickets, really. You know, the first couple of tours we were spending longer after the gigs, signing albums and signing their tour programs and just, you know, saying hello. And the more successful we became, the less we did it, which on reflection now looks kind of, should have been the other way around.
It was dashing off the stage with your monogram dressing gown, getting onto the coach and roaring off.
When the hit singles are gone, your fan base is gone. You've lost the core audience, and it's just a free fall from that point. You just, you know, because those hit-oriented people, flavor of the month people, they don't stay around past the hit record. As soon as you're done with your hit record, you're out, you're gone.
I always hated growing up when one of my favorite bands changed, but a lot of the kids have to put themselves in the position of the bands. Like all the fans want the bands to stay the same, the diehard fans, but they don't understand that if the band doesn't mature and doesn't move forward, they're going to stagnate as a band.
The thing with Metallica was, you know, they had this tremendous following for years and years and years, you know, before they really exploded. And it was built up word to mouth, and people absolutely worshipped